Okay. Okay. We are on live. Is everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would like to call the regular council meeting of March 22nd to order. First item is approval of the agenda.
Approval.
Second.
Excuse me, we have amendments.
Oh,
Okay.
So I'll move that we approve the agenda with the removal of 6.2, the Coal Hills BMX license of occupation, and the change in the recommendation for 6.1.
Okay.
Seconder, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried. Minutes of the meeting, please.
So moved.
All in favor? Carried. Delegations. The council received the delegation from Anthony Everett, CEO, Tourism Vancouver Island, providing an introduction of the organization.
Move receipt.
Seconder?
And
All in favor? Carried. Okay. Welcome, Anthony.
So Karen and I are free to join on the video now. Karen,
yes.
You can. Thank you. Oh, there's Karen. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor, for having us. We're thrilled to be here. I will share my screen now, if that's okay.
Please do.
We'll do this. Okay, here we go. All right, there we are. So we gave you this presentation quite a few weeks ago, actually, and a lot has happened in that time since. So we will do our best here to introduce Tourism Vancouver Island, ourselves, and give you a bit of a taste of some of the things we're working on in your area. Since again that meeting, I just want you to know that we've talked to a lot of people in your community and the communities around you about a number of issues, chambers, business improvement. It's been very productive and fun. Today, you'll hear a little bit from me to talk about Tourism Vancouver Island, some of what we have been working on in the last year during the pandemic, and about my thoughts on recovery, our thoughts on recovery, and what that looks like. And then Karen will give you, we'll kind of round things up with kind of where we're at today with some of our work in the Comox Valley, recognizing that this is just a taste because there are time limitations. And I'm not sure, forgive me knowing your processes, but with questions. So I'll leave that with you at the end. And I really hope, we're very sincere in this, that this isn't the first time that we can meet with you. If you want us to go in depth on a number of things, we have lots of information to impart, but we didn't feel like today was the time for it, given not only the time limitations, but maybe this will prompt you to think of things that you want to ask us or other thoughts. So I'm speaking to you from Snuneymuxw territory. We would like to recognize our ability to be on their territory. I also want to acknowledge this artist for what you see here. It is a welcome totems, and it is by a local Snuneymuxw artist here in Nanaimo named Joel Good, and we're privileged to be able to use the image and be able to talk about it today. I'll talk a little bit about our work with Indigenous people and reconciliation a little bit as we go here, but thank you for having us. And I'd like to, acknowledge the territory we're on. You also, if I didn't say this earlier, I think it's very, very important that you hear a few words from Karen. I think I referenced that. Not only is Karen a brilliant marketer, but I want, I really hope that we can get to know you and Karen can get to know you. Karen is helping us lead with our community collaborations, such as this one, and it's important that you hear from her today. If you didn't know, Tourism Vancouver Island is been around for almost over 60 years now. I think we're one of the largest or longest standing regional destination management organizations in the province. Of course, we weren't always calling ourselves destination management organizations. We did a lot of promotion and marketing, and these days it's a much smaller part of what we're we do. And what we're really standing for these days is our belief that we need to advocate for business. We work with our board of directors made up of 13 directors that are all senior business leaders or owner operators from around the island. And they have been, we have strong board governance, and they help us set strategy. And you're going to learn a lot about the team, because that's who does the work day to day. And you'll see some pictures of the team here coming up. But really what gets us out of bed in the morning, not just before the pandemic, but now more than ever, is working directly with our businesses. We have done a lot of work in the last year, and even prior, but this last year, of working directly with government ministers, and I'm talking provincially. Federally, we do that work. It's a little bit more difficult, but we do that, and then we work with communities such as yours up and down the island. We are interested in the industry continuing to develop, and now more than ever, this is an important, that the industry, which is going to be recovering in the years ahead, we're focused on how industry is developing, brand stewardship. So the brand that is Vancouver Island, that is a world-renowned, world-class brand, that we're stewarding it appropriately. One of our main pillars of our work now is reconciliation with our Indigenous people. We have an Indigenous specialist that works within our team, soon to be having 2 Indigenous people that will work with us on this. And we really are set on measuring our success as we grow our industry or work with our industry with using UNDRIP and with the principles of reconciliation in mind. Sustainability and the sustainability of our environment. Sustainability means many things to us. It's a core value of ours and what we're working on. We believe in serving the industries with tourism, and tourism services is what we provide up and down the island now, not just in the Comox Valley. We've been doing it for years at the community level in the regional district of Mount Waddington. We do it in, pretty much every community. We're doing specific work for those communities, including Cowichan Valley, Port Alberni, Ucluelet, and many, many others. And I think the number one thing that I would hope that you remember from this is we are not a perfect organization. We strive every day to be, and we just want to promote excellence, our own excellence, and be open to changing and adapting as best we can. And I don't think right now, one of the key things we've learned in the last few years, particularly the last year, is we need to work with many people to accomplish our goal. And that's kind of what we set out. And so, really for us, the last year has really underscored this value that we bring, which is we try to meet the needs, be flexible in meeting the needs of our businesses and our communities on Vancouver Island. This is a very, fraught time. I think that people are really struggling, and our organization is really trying to meet the needs of the businesses primarily, and then the communities, and trying to be as flexible and as dynamic in that paradigm as possible. We have a number of people that are working with us now up and down the island. We're very blessed. And this is many of the core team, and I'll talk a little bit more, from visitor servicing right through to destination development and marketing and strategic planning. We're engaged in a number of areas these days. The core team is myself as the CEO, accountable to our board of directors. Karen, as I said, is our talented marketer that really looks at working with the communities directly and accomplishing their marketing goals, and the island as a whole, and many, many other things. A small organization like ours, we wear many, many hats, and we're always looking for good people that want to do anything and have that can-do attitude. I know some of you will have met Callum. Callum works primarily with communities as they're developing their tourism, and has done that for a number of years now, and he's here. And then also we bring a pretty sophisticated level of digital sophistication to businesses and communities, and we have a digital expert that is Hannah that we work with. So all 4 of us will be working with the Comox Valley work that we're engaged on, and just done now. I guess it's at the end of this month, it'll be about 3 months. And so all these and the whole team, but these are the main people that are leading in all these areas. And then in the Comox Valley, We have somebody on the ground there, Tanya, that came over from CVEDS that is working with us. Dino is our visitor center manager. He has managed the visitor center here in Nanaimo for many years, and now has picked up the work in the Comox Valley, and has, I'm sure you'll be seeing Dino because he gets around and meets. His primary focus is bringing as many businesses into the visitor center as possible, so that we're educated to talk about them. And then the 2 visitor center staff that are in the visitor center there in the Comox Valley that we came over to us in this our current contract agreement. One of the things that we've been working on, and some of you may have heard me speak about this in various things. I've done a number of presentations, but I'm losing track of to who all. And you may have heard that this year we have our primary role has been called the Tourism Resiliency Network. It started here in Vancouver Island, and it is geared to helping businesses through this pandemic. It started as a service to help them figure out programs that they could access, and it evolved into a whole suite of experts and with financial supports and a variety of supports. And that partnership was made possible by a number of partners that are in our industry. This is just a few of them, of the ones that we work with currently. There's actually quite a few others that aren't listed here, but I wanted to bring it up because this past year, our main focus has been this tourism resiliency program, and it likely will be for the year ahead. The main funders of that program have been the province, Western Diversification, and of course ICE-T. It wouldn't have been possible without ICE-T, actually, because they were the first partner in the door. Very proud of our relationship there. And actually, in my 30+ year history of working in tourism, this is probably the single proudest thing I've ever been a part of. We're helping businesses, and that's what it's all about. And I don't think we've helped them, could help them any better than this, other than if we had a lot of money and we were signing checks. But right now we're servicing over 1,700 businesses province-wide. And these are the businesses. So if you haven't seen on our social channels, maybe we can, if you look at social channels, hopefully you've seen some of these. But these are our businesses on the island, and we call them our island storm riders. This is just a selection of a few of them. And all of these people have had their stories told and featured in many of our digital platforms to talk about how they've adapted and how they've had to change their businesses as the pandemic has gone on and into the future. And as I said, this is just a selection of a few of them. There's many, many more. It was a program to give them profile, and actually it got a tremendous amount of media coverage of the kinds of things that businesses are doing to adapt and evolve. I'm going to kind of wind down there. I hope I've been, relatively fast and succinct enough for you to get a taste of the many things that we're doing. And then Karen and I just wanted you to have a taste of some of our initial thoughts on the work that we're doing in the Comox Valley. And I'm sure that you'll have some questions. I'm going to end by saying this. We believe in a regional model for the Comox Valley, and we think everybody should be working together, and that's our approach. And we believe in collaboration, and everyone benefits, and we want to lift everyone up. And so I've spent a lot of time in the last couple of months, as has Karen, reassuring people that's our approach, and that's what we do. That's what we're all about. And it's hard to. For us, it's almost hard to put into words because it's so ingrained in who we are, and any other way of doing things doesn't make sense to us. So, and that might get you thinking of questions you want to ask me. But with that, I will ask Karen to drive the bus here a little bit. So Karen, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. You'll still have to drive the slide deck, so I'll tell you when.
Okay, just tell me when, yeah.
Sure. So thank you everybody for inviting us to speak to you today. While our office, Tourism Vancouver Island, is located on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation, my own home is located still in Nanaimo, but on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation, and that's where I come to you today. Some of the differentiators of our organization that I think is important to keep in mind is we are a team of approximately 12 tourism professionals And the opportunities that we bring to communities and businesses that we work with in this kind of contract context is a understanding of the context of tourism, because we are so deeply embedded within it at the provincial level. That includes our commitment to the BC brand, which, if you aren't familiar with it and you love that kind of thing, I can certainly forward a link, a lengthy document, but essentially it guides the look and feel of our marketing. And I highly believe that it's valuable because there is quite a bit of equity built up in that brand. And so if you as a community and a collection of businesses and communities also utilize that brand, you're just buying into that equity. We believe in deep collaboration, and so I hope you've kind of got that sense already. It's an internal structure as well as an external structure. So internally, it means that our staff are not in charge of one small area, rather they are sort of the Jack or Jill of all trades, and everybody works together to define what kind of strategy and opportunities we build. And as Anthony has touched on as well, our motivation is really to serve the businesses. Really, it's the businesses who guide the opportunities and the way that we build out the marketing strategy and hope to meet the needs. Without the businesses, there is no tourism, and we focus on serving the businesses in the best possible way. And then another differentiator I do want to bring forward is our organization is very keen on sustainable models of tourism. It's really not about the number of people who come into a destination, and I know that Cumberland knows that more than some of the other communities in British Columbia, based on the popularity of your trails. The reason for that is that we believe that tourism as a sustainable entity will in the long run yield the best results. It's not just about dollars and cents. So we do have a little bit of a process, which I'll give you a very brief snapshot of when we're working with communities and businesses on marketing strategy. The first thing I want to point out is that it's highly consultative. So we engage with businesses, we engage with community leaders such as yourselves to be able to define the identity of Comox Valley. And we want to be able to define that so that when we're going into the marketplace, we aren't just another BC destination, but rather one that has unique opportunity. And then we build that out towards achievement. So then we take that and then we define what those opportunities are. And then Anthony, if you go to the next slide. It's a very simple process because, as I like to say, marketing is not like building a rocket ship. It's quite simple. There are a certain number of tactics that you can do. So once you have an understanding of how best to position the opportunities that exist within the communities already, it's a matter of using that marketing mix to the best of your ability to make an impact with the consumers. And so our team operationalizes the work plans that we develop. And then it is a next process, Anthony, of measurement, quite simply. And then it's rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So if you get the sense of a circle, it's consultation, definement, achievement, measuring, and then learning constantly from, as we say, the mistakes that we make, the assumptions that we make that don't quite fit. And then finally, I just want to give you a sense in the next slide as to some of the things that we've started to work on for the Comox Valley. As Anthony said, we're coming to the end of the third month, and we've tried to move forward as best we could over the last 3 months, given that there has been, it has been a bit more disruptive, I guess, in the last couple of weeks. The first thing that we did was in taking over the social media channels for Comox Valley, we prioritized user-generated content, which is where we get permission from people who post on social channels where we love what they've posted and it's on brand to share their content. We use hashtags and like tagging other individuals and other organizations in the community because that's overall amplification that really supports all of us. So I know that we did hear that the URock highlight that we did in one of our posts most recently was really well received in Cumberland. And that's just indicative of the way that we like to position social media. We work with an incredible individual who is a contractor to us, but she's probably the best in the industry, and she lives in the Comox Valley, and she could not be more delighted to be doing this contract for all of you. We acknowledge that there's quite a bit of engagement that we need to do with the tourism businesses and individuals like yourselves, and with the residents as well. So we've started to look at having consultation conversations. We've looked at the governance structures and reporting mechanisms that exist in the Comox Valley already so that we can make recommendations. And because we sort of aim for a high level of achievement, we always try to align ourselves with the provincial standard. And we've done that in this case with the visitor services staff as well. So we've now trained them on Destination BC's visitor servicing training program. And our visitor center manager, Dino, is working really hard to get them familiarization opportunities within the Comox Valley. In fact, they will be in Cumberland in 2 days. So if you see them, the delegation of mask wearers doing a Cumberland Museum tour, walking tour, wave to them. I understand they'll also be popping in to visit some businesses. Because of COVID, we aren't doing as many of those group kind of sessions, and except where they can be accommodated outdoors. But we are providing our staff with gift cards to businesses so that on their own time, they can go and experience product. We're working to make sure that the businesses in the Comox Valley, all of them that want to participate, have a listing on the Discover Comox Valley website. We've met with the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce and the downtown BIAs, and they have kindly offered their help to help facilitate those reach outs as well to make sure we're all aligned. And then finally, I'll mention that we're working with Black Press on the Discover Comox Valley Guide, quite a generous organization that has offered us the opportunity to provide pretty much all of the content for that guide. And so we've gone to community partners to ask them to help us put together that content, including the Comox Valley Arts Council. And we've worked with the airport as well to make sure that everybody feels, and the BIAs in the Comox Valley Chamber, as I mentioned. And then Anthony, if you go to the next slide, I'll just say some of the big groups that we're working on for hopefully looking into the future. Again, is the stakeholder engagement piece. We would love to work on a brand that is informed by engagement with all of you and all of the stakeholders and residents of the Comox Valley. There's a research project that CVEDS is working on through Mobilescapes, which is cell phone tower data. And so we're quite keen to start a new quarter and take it to the next level. And that's all I have.
We will continue to serve you. We believe in service. And so we're here to serve the businesses and communities on the island. And finally, I know you're hearing a lot of this, but there's never been a time that the industry as a tourism industry needs to collaborate. And actually, we need to get everyone believing this, because the recovery from what we've just been through will be long and challenging. And so we are keeping the mantra that Dr. Henry has provided us. So there you are. I will stop sharing here if I can figure that out. Why is this not? Okay, I'll get this done. Just a sec.
Okay.
It's disappeared on me for some reason. I don't know why, but anyway. Here we go. There we go. Thanks. Somebody did it. Good. Thanks.
So Anthony, you're open to some questions from members of council?
Love questions.
Okay, Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. That was really good, and I really feel like you guys have good core values as an organization that seem to align with the village. So that's definitely a positive. And yeah, you're already in our community. It sounds like going to be doing a tour and whatnot. So that's wonderful. Thanks so much.
Councillor Sproul.
Well, I'm very impressed. There's a lot of initiatives that we haven't seen before, and it sounds like everybody's getting up to speed on all the important things with tourism, including Cumberland. So yeah, I look forward to meeting and seeing more of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Me too.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, it's a great presentation. It's looking forward to you guys doing some good work here. I'm just curious how much the equity, where the rubber hits the road here. I hear you mentioning working with other communities. Just curious, are you guys the follow up to CVEDs? Or you work? Sounds like you work with CVEDs. You've taken over the visitor center. I'm missing the middle here.
All right, you cut out, but I don't know. It might just be me, but you cut out. The question cut out. So we in January we were asked to take a contract from CVEDs to operationalize tourism in the Comox Valley under them. But the but is that it's for the visitor center to operationalize the visitor center and to operationalize a portion of the funds that they receive from the, I don't want to complicate things because it's kind of complicated, but from the Crown corporation called Destination British Columbia. And that's what we're doing. So when Karen referenced CVEDs, there was existing things that we've had to work with that came through that agreement. And we're well aware of other things going on in the Comox Valley around that, but we're just trying to soldier ahead, I guess is the best way to answer, given the changing dynamics. And we will do this as long as communities want us to. And when it's something else needs to come into play, then it'll either be us or we're just there to make it function. So that's what we're doing. I hope I answered that right.
Specifically, my question is financially. I mean, CVEDs, you pay to belong, and currently the village is not involved in the contract with CVEDs. So more so, the amount that it costs to become part of this service, maybe, or are we just involved?
There's no cost. You're just involved. Tourism Vancouver Island represents you. There's no cost. Zero. And we won't operate in that way ever. So just so you know.
Can't wait.
Okay.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, so as you can tell, it's this is a really positive change for us, and I appreciate the work you are doing to enter this sector and this area, this community or set of communities in a kind of complicated time. So I imagine that's has its challenges. So thank you for that. And I think it's so great that we now actually have a professional destination marketing organization doing tourism in the Comox Valley with people with tourism educations and backgrounds. I think that'll go a long way to helping bring the three communities and the outlying areas together in a common destination marketing strategy, and I'm looking very forward to that. You probably are aware that the village of Cumberland had a bit of a shock last summer when tourism struck us in a way that it did, I think, most of the island communities, especially those with mountain biking trails or any other outdoor recreation opportunities. And we were it was a lot, and there's some community stress around that, just the increased traffic basically on the trails. And so there's a lot of tourism management, I think, and I'm sure there's a word for it, but when you spread them out over bigger spaces.
Yeah.
So we're not all on top of each other. So yeah, looking forward to more conversations around those sort of mitigation and management strategies for us, because I think that'll be really helpful. And just highlighting the other, it's not just mountain biking trails. We have a beautiful, flat, accessible trail that goes through a Japanese heritage area and a Chinese heritage area. There's so much more here as well, including a super funky downtown core with really great things that I won't mention just one of, but they're all great.
Fair enough. That was a lot, and it was wonderful, and it's music to our ears. The fancy term is dispersion.
Thank
So
you.
our job, our job is to try, but think of it. Think of like, Cumberland, think of Victoria, think of Tofino, think even the North Island last year, I see even because there's a lot more room there. They encountered exactly what you're talking about. It's everywhere. It is a concern. Even before COVID, we've been talking about this for a while. We're trying to play with all kinds of ways to mitigate and do different things. So I loved everything you just said, because the fact that you're even knowledgeable about that is awesome for us. So there may be other questions, but I do have one request to leave you with is as we work on this together with you, we really want tourism and tourism management, as we call it, not just the marketing part, because sometimes we don't need to be marketing some of this, that we need to be managing it, is we need to rise out of the politicization of tourism. Tourism visitors who come here don't pay attention to all our boundaries that we create. And so we just, at some point, I would love, it could take years and I'm okay with that, but we just need to start it on the right path. So that's my request in your leadership roles, is you can help us get that message out with everyone in the whole valley. So thank you. That was great.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony. I did see a couple of pictures of Cumberland in your presentation. It was very nice to see. You've obviously been at work already. I'm absolutely amazed at the amount of work you've done in 3 months. And I'd like to thank Karen for her work with Kalen. He's doing, the two of you are doing a very good job. And so thank you very much. I had an interesting phone call today with Mayor Karen Elliott from Squamish. And we were comparing trails and the people, and very, very similar to what's going on over there as to what's happening in Cumberland. Very similar. And so she is sending me some information on how they are dealing with it. And it's really quite interesting to see, even though we're far apart, the things that we have that are the same, and what's happening with the visitors when they come into our community. Very much the same. So I look forward to working with you, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation to attend this evening. And I think I'm meeting with Dino on Wednesday.
Dino is fun. We'll like Dino. He's a fun guy. We love Dino.
I've been on the phone with him a couple of times, so it'll be interesting to meet him.
He's a character.
Yes, he is. Yeah. So thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay. Next, recommend that council receive the delegation from Lister DeVere and Ben Mason regarding a proposed Green New Deal for Cumberland. Councillor Sprugel, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Good evening, Lister and Ben.
Oh, I was muted there. I think I am hearable now. It's a very nice evening indeed. I am appreciating the blue skies. So yeah, Ben, do you want me to just introduce a little bit about what we've been doing?
Good.
So as you all know, especially Mayor Baird and Councillor Kettler, we've been working on a newer draft of the Green New Deal that's more suitable for Cumberland, its priorities and its capabilities. I can definitely speak for both Ben and I in saying that we have learned a lot, and it's still a fragment of what you guys have had to learn, but we've learned a lot about what Cumberland can do and municipal responsibilities. So even that was a great learning experience. But so we finished this a couple of weeks back, the draft, and we are here today to answer any questions you might have about that.
Okay, so we will go around the table and see if there's council members that would like to ask. Councillor Brewell.
And I know where my mute button is now. I was ready. Yeah, I'm again, I don't want to use the word lightly, but impressed at all the stuff you've covered. Like, I don't think you've left anything out that is necessary for the Green New Deal. I'm curious to know, where did you do your research? Where did you get all this information? Did you cobble it together? Is it in one place, or you've done a good job of putting it all together?
Yeah, there's definitely many different websites and different resources that we used, especially since it encompasses so many different areas, we definitely had to use a lot of different resources.
Ah, good stuff. Thank you.
I'll speak for a second, and then my brother needs to get into the room. But yeah, I got inspired by a book, as I explained last time, and then I found a bunch of resources from the Council of Canadians. Like, this document is mainly adapted from one main document, and then as time has gone on, we've just refined it based on Cumberland, focus on what works in Cumberland, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, great job, guys. I really like some of the new changes. I just have a couple concerns, and really not major ones. Stuff like Cumberland shall ensure a reduction of at least 30% in our emissions by 2025. I don't want to sign on as something that seems a little bit lofty. I think we'd have to like talk to Public Works and things like that, because 30% seems like quite a lot in 4 years. That's just one thing. And also something I'd like to address through this with the construction emissions and stuff is something I noticed while the roads are getting fixed is just construction idling. I'd like the village to look at something like that, because while the roads are getting fixed, I noticed a dump truck idling for maybe an hour. And I understand about engines and turning it off and turning it on, but I also understand that engines are built differently these days, and turning it off and on is not such a big deal, and you're not wasting that much energy. So yeah, something that we can sign on to, can control more stuff like that, that the village be responsible for people who are bringing in construction companies and reducing their emissions. Maybe that's helpful as well. And so, yeah, I'm really impressed, fellas. I think all these things are great. This is definitely where the council leans, all these initiatives. I know that the PACE initiative is also financially a little bit difficult to achieve. So I know that financially the village has responsibilities to the residents to strive for the best buildings that we can, but also the price point is also difficult for us sometimes. So I guess just through the staff, what is the best way to implement something like this? I mean, does this get embedded into the OCP update, or is this its own living document that we adhere to?
From staff, we would recommend that council refer this to staff for further to understand how it would work for our operations, and we could report back to council.
Great.
Also, just to address for the 30% emissions by 2025, we have there is another resolution in there that says basically if we find out that some of them aren't doable, that we can't do them, that we'll not just give up, but there's a clause saying that we'll look back on them and try to figure out new ways to do them, or try to figure out if they are feasible or possible. So that's kind of that's all on that same section, I believe. Yeah, so just in case some of them we find out it's not actually as feasible as we thought, then we're able to look back on them and try to figure out new ways, and maybe see other ways that we could do them, or try other things.
That's exactly what I would have said. There's that clause, and then 30% definitely does seem like a lot, but I'm hoping that between all the potential grants that are out there and what we can do, I'm hoping that we'll be able to find ways to install renewables that are going to make these goals possible. And just, yeah, I guess we'll see what grants are out there. And like Ben said, if it's going to be absolutely impossible, then we just are going to have to figure out another way or an alternative. So, yeah.
It's a great initiative, just hoping that we can meet those goals.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thank you so much, you two, for all this work. I think we lost a few resolutions, but I think there's 53 altogether. So that's a lot to get us started, and I'm super happy to see the 30% by 2025. I think it's important for us to set those goals, and I think you're right. The resolution that has us that gives us an out asks us to explain why we can't meet those goals, and so makes us accountable in that way. So even if we can't, we need to explain why we can't and what we're doing to move in that direction, which I think is important, because it's going to be a leap, and the sooner we make that leap, the better. And I also really liked the 20% affordable housing bylaw and the on-demand transit. And of course, the PACE program, we just passed a motion at a meeting not long ago to move that forward. I know there were a few rental and rental tenancy items that didn't make it through. So maybe we can look at some of those in the future if we have an opportunity to work with some of the landlords we have in Cumberland and see what might work. But I do have one question. There's a thing, I can't remember what number it is, but it's a Healthy Communities Action Plan on Anti-Racism and Equity. And I don't know what that Healthy Communities.
Page 9.
Is that it? Sorry, I should have written down the page.
Anti-racism and equity, is that?
Yeah, that's right. The first.
Yeah, this will
resolution there.
follow the Healthy Communities Action Plan. Is that a local thing or is that a bigger, broader thing?
I believe that's a provincial thing. We talked about it a little bit. I watched a webinar of which I remember very little, but to sum it up, like we don't have to follow everything, but just to use it as a guideline, I think would be really good. I mean, generally their big definition of what it is just, let me bring it up here. It's equity focused community engagement planning. So, I mean, it's not like we have to implement everything there, but if we, yeah, I believe it says support. I'm not sure if it says follow or support in the draft they got to you. But if we can get some inspiration for anything, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, and there's actually some work happening with, I'm not going to remember the name of the organization. It's, they work with our immigrant service centers and things like that. Anyway, I'm sorry to whoever they are, whatever their name is, I don't remember, but they did 2 webinars recently with local electeds and talked about those issues. So I know some of that work is happening locally. So maybe we can look at the provincial thing and then connect it to the local people and come up with something there that would help. Yeah. So yeah, just thank you. Thanks so much.
Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, I think there was a number of things that we really just were able to reference existing documents or existing legislation. Instead of recreating the wheel, we can look at the things that we are doing and reference those things. So it did take us a while to go through all of those and figure out what we are and are not doing and how to write those up in resolutions that make sense. Yeah, these 2 were great in doing that. They actually had a lot of knowledge of those things and legislation already, and that was quite impressive. And we had great conversations about, you know, the way people might interpret some of these things and what sort of impact that has on the public as well. So I think that's why some things were taken out is because, you know, the interpretation could be taken in ways that, you know, might end up harming the village. So there were a few resolutions like that we did discuss. So, but I am really impressed, you know, and thankful that you both came and brought this forward, because I think we have really got sidetracked by COVID and we lost our way a little bit as far as the Green New Deal and you know, greenhouse gas reductions. I think it's good to bring that back to the forefront because it is so important, and it will affect all of us and certainly future generations like yourselves. So thanks so much for doing all this work, and yeah, we'll certainly pass this on to staff and get this on the books, in the works.
Well, thank you very much. Also, I mean, we definitely cannot underestimate how much work was put in by both Mayor Barrett and Councillor Kettler. Is really incredible and really like an amazing learning opportunity for both of us to really, like, I have a great foundation, I would say, in this type of work because of it. And yeah, something like 4 weeks worth of meetings and a lot of work was put into it. So thank you very much for that as well.
Okay. Lister, did you want to say something, or I'll say what I'm going to say, okay? And then you two can wrap it up. I do have one recommendation, and it's on page 8, and it's the very last resolution. It says Cumberland will encourage and collaborate with other municipalities and regional districts who are interested in the Green New Deal. I would like to see us add First Nations, if that's appropriate with everyone.
I absolutely agree. I can't believe we didn't think of that in the first
I
place.
know.
But that's definitely, I think, a good thing to add. If we can get that in post, I'm sure that's doable. And
Yes.
it's a living document, as we have another clause in there about. So if we ever, like, we didn't include, going back to what Vicky said, we didn't include the stuff about the rentals because the way it was written, it seemed like a large part of it was based on the fact that we were going to do inspections, and we found that we didn't have the jurisdiction to do that. But if something comes up in the future, or we see another community doing something that really works, or like we have these community suggestions, that's another thing in here. Then of course we can update it or just work things into the plan and say, I mean, this is supported by a Green New Deal initiative, and this is supported by our OCP or whatever it is. So hopefully we can just keep updating it. And yeah, but I totally agree with what you said, Mayor Baird. That's a great idea.
Thank you. Well, I'll commend you. It was a joy to work with you two young men, and you were very open for discussion. And we did discuss a lot of the items, and the realization that in some places we cannot do some things, and there are provincial regulations that we have to follow. And although we would love to implement some of those things, we just don't have the legal right to do that. But we will be watching for changes. And as you say, this will be a living document. And I'm sure we'll look at it every couple and make sure that we're following it. So thank you very, very much. And there is no resolution tonight. We would make it at the next council meeting. But unless you want to make, I know it's very unusual for us to do that, but we could just pass it on to staff to come back. And instead of meeting for the next council meeting, just direct staff to, if that's in agreement to all of council.
If I can speak for a moment, I mean, I think that sounds good for me, and it sounds good to me. And if it makes more sense to give the staff more time to digest or work on other things beforehand, and you want to wait another couple weeks, no big deal either. So it's totally up to you guys.
The staff wouldn't take it on until we made the motion to do it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we refer this final version of the Green New Deal to staff for a report on how we might incorporate the Green New Deal into our strategic priorities and quarterly reporting.
Seconder, Councillor Spruill. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe not so specific about the strategic planning, because it might end up that we bring this to the OCP planning. I'm not sure. Maybe we just leave it open as to staff to give their feedback on how to incorporate it.
How does the mover feel?
Well, I think the OCP is a long way off, and I tried to find actually where it is in our strategic priorities. So let me just see.
Can we just put in the motion that we'll move it forward?
How we can move it forward. Yeah, sure. So to refer to staff for a report on how we can move the Green New Deal forward.
Yes. Okay.
Sure.
And you agree with that, Councillor Spruill? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was a pleasure.
Thank all of you. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, have a good evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Next, we have unfinished business. And in that unfinished business, we had a presentation from Steve Morgan at our last council meeting on the from the Cumberland Wetland Working Group, and their presentation was on Coal Valley Estates Development. So if you would like to discuss it further or move the motion that was on the agenda. Councillor Brown?
So the motion, the recommendation that's there just refers to the request from Steve. So I went back and had a look at what he was actually asking us to do, which is committing to protecting the natural areas and engaging qualified professionals to evaluate the impacts of the proposed development on all the natural systems within and surrounding the area, which the area I believe is the ravine and adjacent slopes. So just wanted that to be a piece of the recommendation.
Have you written that down?
So, yeah.
Okay.
So I can move it if we're ready to move it if we don't have conversation about it.
Well, we need a seconder to, then we can have discussion. Seconder, okay, now we can have the discussion. Does anybody have any comments or want to make? How about reading the motion out?
I move that we refer the request from Steve Morgan to that council commit to protecting the natural areas and engaging qualified professionals to evaluate the impacts of the proposed development on all of the natural systems within and surrounding the ravine area to staff as part of the environmental and wildfire development permit area application for phase 10 of the Coal Valley Estates development.
And so Councillor Kettler? I see it.
I certainly agree in principle with this motion. I'm just a little concerned about us committing to when it's saying inside and outside the development area. We're protecting the natural areas inside and outside the development area because, you know, obviously there's natural areas that are within the development area that are not going to be protected. So yeah, that's my concern with this motion is that, yes, of course, I support protecting those areas within the park, the ravine area that is designated Village of Cumberland land. But I would have concerns about us committing to protection of private land that we don't actually have control over the natural quote natural areas of private land.
Can I just clarify? So it's two separate things. So protecting these natural areas, so protecting the ravine, which is the park, and then engaging qualified professionals to evaluate the impacts of the proposed development on the natural systems within and surrounding areas. So it's not about protecting those areas necessarily, it's about getting the professionals professional comment on the impacts of the adjacent development. Is that clear enough? Is that okay?
Yes, Councillor Kettler, finish it off.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And I think that's something that is occurring anyway and something that we would commit to as a council, regardless of whether this was brought forward. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Councillor Sullivan?
This sounds also like we're on the hook. Isn't that something that we've been asking Waycor to pay for several years?
No, I think any of the legal or professional fees we would incur would be paid for by the proponent. Do I need to put that in the motion as well? I think that's sort of standard with that we peer review and that we ask for that. Yes, thank you, Michelle.
Michelle's here.
Yeah, so our bylaws speak to whether or not we are reviewing their work, and then that becomes a peer review and we charge that back to them. So if we're reviewing their professionals' work, then we can be reimbursed for that.
Is this motion getting out of their, like us going ahead of their professionals' work? Is that what, am I mistaking this? Sounds to me like the motion is us just doing that first or anyhow.
Yeah, you're just.
The way
Hold
Sorry.
it, Michelle speaking.
No, that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, it's just, you're just referring it to staff. His request, but, and then I guess you're more concerned about Councillor Brown's amendment to the resolution.
Yeah, so it stands as a referral to staff. So we're referring the request from Steve Morgan.
I got it, sorry.
Full commit. Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're good. And I think that we had already asked for all kinds of professional reports on these lands ages ago. So I think it's just doing what we've already.
yes, we've already protected the ravine, and it's going to continue that protection. We've already made that quite clear to him.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Sproul?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm satisfied with the resolution as it's been outlined, but I'm really happy to keep seeing the concern over the wetlands in Chinatown, because we still don't really know which way the pipe is going to go when it comes out halfway along Camp Road. So anyway, I think Steve has captured many of our concerns, and we still don't know that kind of stuff. So hopefully we will.
Okay, so any other questions on the motion? Okay, ready? All in favor? Okay, carried. Next, recommend that council receive the local government development approvals program funding report.
Move receipt.
Seconder? All in favor? Carried. Courtney.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So the purpose of this report is to seek council direction to submit an application for funding under the UBCM Local Government Development Approvals Program. And the project that we would apply for would be to support a review and modernization of the village's development approvals process. So in short, this would include things such as an internal review of our current development approvals process, creating public communication materials about it, and improving our information technology to track and manage our development applications. So this is a really exciting opportunity. The maximum amount we could apply for is $500,000. We haven't yet determined what amount we would apply for, but if council gives the direction, then we will do that research. And this is exciting because if we can complete a project like this, there should be savings in planning staff time to improve and improved service delivery. And we have good systems in place now that have served us well over the years, but things are getting more complicated and development is picking up, and it would be really, really important to have improved information technology for managing all this information. And I'll note that if council directs us to submit this application, we wouldn't probably need to return to council to make the application. It would be enough information to make the application. If we did receive the grant, then there would be a report to council and with a recommendation to add the funds we received to the financial plan.
Any questions from members of council? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thanks so much, Courtney. This does indeed look like a really great opportunity for us. I have a couple of questions. So the first is that it looks like they are making a decision around the grant, like we would know whether we had the grant in August. So but the intake is May. Did I get that? Okay, yeah. So it goes in relatively quickly. So my concern is we've had, the renovation of the office and then the IT update, and the office has been closed for a year. And, we've had staff turnover and we have a long list. I just off the top of my head made a list of 10 bylaws that are waiting for update. And so I'm just wondering about the capacity to manage applying for the grant, getting the grant, doing all those bylaw updates that we need in a timely way while we're like completely adapting our planning department into the 21st century, which is an amazing opportunity. But how, if you could just maybe speak to how that's how you're able to manage all that.
Yes. Well, we do have some funds to support a consultant assisting in making the grant application. So we would make use of that. And the grant, the program actually funds up to 100% of the costs. So we would put together a project proposal that has probably a series of consultants and at least two, maybe a couple more, and one would be to manage the project. Of course, it will take staff time to work with them, to give them the information they need, etc. But we would have someone managing the project, and that includes things like doing the inventory, research of what's the current situation for Cumberland and our managing of development applications, and even doing market research about what software might be available that we could implement.
Can I have a follow-up, Mayor?
Yes.
And so then I see in the application that it's also, the funding is also available for updating those bylaws. So could we have a concurrent consultant whipping all those bylaws up while we're reviewing how we're going to do them? Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I think a lot of this has to, we want to get rid of the backlog. And that would be amazing to do that. And I think that would benefit the staff, that alone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from council?
This looks like the best thing we've ever applied for.
Yes, it is. I think you're right. The changes that it's going to make are absolutely, it could be absolutely amazing and streamline a lot of our processes.
We need the help here for sure.
Yes. Okay. Councillor Spruill.
Yeah, it seems that developers are always saying that everything gets backlogged in the office, and I'm sure it does to some degree, especially here in Cumberland where we're so popular. So this is like almost unbelievable that we will potentially get monies to help us become more efficient and streamlined and be able to move then to keep up with the work after the consultants have gone. So I really hope we get the whole $500,000. It seems a very generous grant, and I think we're just made for it. So.
And I think the government also realizes the pressure that we as municipalities are under with all the development that's happening in communities, especially the smaller communities. So if that's all, anyone else want to speak? No? Then, okay, someone like to move?
Sure, I'll move the council direct staff to submit an application to the Union of BC Municipalities Local Government Development Approvals Program for funding to review and update the Village of Cumberland's development approvals processes, including information technology to support it, and that the Village of Cumberland provide overall grant management.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Now we're on to 6.3. The council received the procurement results for wastewater upgrade report.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Welcome, Paul.
Good evening.
Nice to have you back.
It is great to be back, even if I'm actually not back in Cumberland, but I can assure council I have been back numerous times since the last meeting in October where I presented, and it's good to have progress happening. Before I get into my report, I just, this might be a little bit out of protocol, but I feel I should take exception to something that Councillor Sullivan just said. While that UBCM grant is good, I truly think the wastewater money is the best money you've ever applied for.
Right, finish with Dash. I realized. I appreciate the correction, though. Thank you.
In any case, it's the onus is on myself and our soon-to-be hired project team to make sure that the results of it are the best value for money we've ever had, and we are quite determined to do that.
Said recently.
So with my report, I won't actually go through the report because I hope you've all read it, but just to summarize it, it was a lengthy process in writing the RFP. Started that in October, and it took us a bit longer. I'd originally wanted to get the RFP out and proposals back before Christmas. We couldn't quite manage either of those goals, but we got it done in January in a very thorough process. So with lots of help from Colliers and a lot of time from Rob and myself. So it was, yeah, our project structure made a little bit of work to fit it in, but anyway, it went and it went well. For the results, we'll just start off with the project manager. It's kind of funny because we had Colliers, the project management company, helping us write the two main RFPs. And once we had the project description and everything sorted out, then Rob and I turned that into our own project manager RFP. And of course, Colliers were one of the proponents. And we received another one from BTY Consultancy Group. We'd had a couple of other inquiries from engineering companies who were kicking the tires, in effect. And but in the end, we only got the two proposals. And I think the most important thing here is either of them were good enough, but Colliers were clearly better. Yeah, they're very experienced in this space with infrastructure projects and small municipalities. And BTY had done some of one, but not the other. So very happy there to recommend award of the contract there to Colliers. And that was, while we didn't have a big field of responses, the two were good enough. So we're happy with that one. The project engineer, it was disappointing that one of the proposals came in late. And so we were left with the one qualifying proposal from Integrated Sustainability. And just as a matter of protocol with late submissions, you can't even open them, even though they're electronic ones. If it was a paper one, you would return it to the proponent unopened because it was late. So that's the way that one went. So we don't actually know what was in the late proposal. But we do know what was in the Integrated Sustainability one. And of course, its lead engineer, whom you all know, is Dr. Troy Vassos. And so obviously intimately familiar with the project. And it was a good proposal in its own right. So even if there'd been another competing one, it was still actually a good proposal in and of itself. And we're happy to recommend award of the contract, well, to authorize staff to negotiate a contract with them. The fee for it, I'll explain that a little bit more in a moment when I get to the table, exactly how that works. The construction manager one, so two proposals again, and Maple Rinders, who built the leachate treatment plant up there at the Cumberland landfill for the Comox Valley Regional District, very experienced with this sort of thing. And then Shandos Construction, also experienced with wastewater projects. And it was a good proposal, and they were very excited about the proposal structure and the social procurement part. But Maple Rinders overall were better. Once again, either of them were good enough, plenty good enough, but Maple Rinders, you know, wins the horse race by a head. And so we're happy to recommend award or negotiation of that contract. We have I guess there's sort of one little footnote there with Maple Rinders. The exclusions to the contract that they propose need to be negotiated. Rob's been in touch with legal counsel on that. And we think those differences can be resolved. But that's just sort of an asterisk there. As with any contract negotiation, ultimately, if something can't be resolved, then yeah, you can't proceed. And if that were to be the case, then we can always go back to the other proponent, Shandos. But we don't think we'll run into that. The social procurement part, I was reminded at the last council meeting I was at the importance of this, so we made an effort on it. And I think actually I'm putting a lot of effort into the social procurement part of it. We got very good responses back with everybody scoring 4 or 5. And it might be something to have a separate report or session on that maybe in the fall about the results. For now, we'd like to get moving with the project, but it was an interesting exercise and it's worth a review in its own right for the benefit of council in the future. So then the next steps, negotiate the contracts, and we'll come back once we've done that with a report on the status of the budget. We can then give a quarterly update and so on. The table in the financial implications section is probably the most interesting part of this. So I just want to point out, with these RFPs, we've now allocated about 30% of the budget. It hasn't been spent, but it's been allocated. So the design portion for the lagoon upgrades was the fee from integrated sustainability, 786,000. So that's now allocated. For the reed bed and the wetlands part, we didn't ask them to submit the fee because we didn't have enough detail for a meaningful bid. So we just assume the full allowance there of 120,000 each. And so that part too is now allocated. For the project manager, their fee of 1.5 million is for managing the construction of the project. Sorry, that's the construction manager, not the project manager. They will do all of the subcontracting. They don't actually put a markup on the subcontracts. That's what they're being paid for here as part of their fee. So it's allocated 1.5 million. And then the project manager itself, Collier's 0.235. So we've now allocated about 3 million of the budgets. Amazing to say that, a third of the budget without actually having built a single thing or even designed anything, but it's allocated and not spent. So with that, I think I'll conclude my verbal report and be happy to take any and all questions the council may have. Thank you.
And Councillor Sutherland, we'll start with you.
I don't really have any questions. I'm just really happy to see this moving forward. Maybe a roundabout start date, is that possible?
A start date in terms of construction?
Yeah, when will we get shovels going into the ground? What do you think?
That is a really good question. I think, regrettably, the realistic answer is about 6 months away. But I think I'll be able to give you a better answer when I come back with my next report to council. And once the team's hired and we've started talking, we'll give an updated timeline. We plan to spend the next 3 months doing the collaborative design process to firm things up. And at the end of that, we'll have a really good idea then of the schedule. But realistically, it'll be 6 months before there's anything designed and tendered enough to be building anything.
Just a follow-up, if I could, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just given the last couple of years, the construction costs have absolutely skyrocketed. So second question being, what are our chances of meeting the budget?
That is a, wow, that's a really good question.
$1 million question.
Yeah.
Good question.
We still think it is good. We'll have a better idea once we have gone through our preliminary design process. But one of the ways we have insulated ourselves is that there is not a lot of heavy construction involving concrete and structures. You know, that's the great thing about here, upgrading the lagoons instead of building a mechanical treatment plant. The amount of heavy civil work is minimized. And certainly those parts of construction are the ones that have gone up the most. So the actual cost for the wastewater treatment equipment and so on hasn't really changed that much, which is good. So that's as good an answer as I can give you at this time.
Great answer, and somewhat the one I was hoping for. Lots of digging, less buildings.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Paul. Appreciate it.
Councillor Kettler?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Paul, for the report and all the work that you continue to do for us. Yeah, I still have my concerns. We went from design build to the construction management approach, which of course we understand has a lot more risk on the cost side. And as Councillor Sullivan had mentioned, being that this has taken a while to get to this process and a while longer to get to the shoveling process, that costs are likely to go up. And then my other concern also is that, these contracts that we put out the RFPs for, the one of them only getting the one bid back, that's always a bit of a flag about cost, right? So we just don't know if that is competitive or not, because there was just the one response. So my concerns are around cost, and we've spent 30% of overall budget, which, as you say, it's a lot for still being at the conceptual phase. So just worried about cost, and knowing that we don't have the funds to deal with overruns beyond what we've put in for contingency here.
Yes, thank you. It is, it's obviously an important thing for myself and the project team too. One of the things that we can do with this project structure, the construction management approach, is we can refine the scope as we go. We do cost estimating as we go with the design, and we can change the scope as we go. If you design the whole thing and put it out to tender, you get what you get, and changes from that point are quite costly because you've already designed it. So here, as we go through this 3-month collaborative design process, the intention is to be do the conceptual design or a couple of different options on different things. What are the cost implications and so on. So we have some flexibility in that regard, even though we can't control what a cubic meter of concrete costs. So yeah, it's still foremost in my mind. With the RFPs, for the design engineer, we had put in the RFP that there is a limit on the amount that it could be. The funding rules are quite specific that design and engineering can only be 15% of the project total. So we put that in there, and it acts effectively as a ceiling on it. You might argue that in doing so, you end up with all these different bids that they'll also put in an equivalent of 15%, and that is possible. So it's possible another bid would have been cheaper, but for that particular item, the fee for the design of the lagoon upgrade portion, the allowance was, what was it? I'm not sure if I had the allowance. Oh yeah, budget 0.8 and the bid was 0.786. Without seeing what the other proposal was, I'm going to take an educated guess and say that it would have been at least 700,000 and less than the ceiling of 800,000. So all of those bids would have come in pretty close on this one. I think the real opportunity for cost management is in how this team then goes about creating and executing the design. But we have to sort of accept that for the engineers, they're not cheap, and that's it's the one part that's probably hardest to save costs on, is actually the design engineering part of it. So does that answer the question? It's as good as I can give at this point.
Yes, it's the answer that I would expect. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. It's great to see this just take the next step. I also, obviously all of us have concerns about the cost and just the way prices are right now. So should we need to refine the scope as we go? Will those changes, how will that come back to us? Is my first question.
Wow, these questions tonight. That is a really good one. Some parts of the scope we can't change. Obviously, we have to achieve the regulatory requirements and so on. But where we can change things, for example, the amenities building that we're proposing to build, we might down scope what is in that building and how luxurious the accommodations are for the operators, and some things like that, for example. With the wetlands component, while the intention is to get the water out there, we might scale back on the public access part. That would be kind of a shame if we had to, because it's the part that the people see. But the key point is, it's in the non-regulatory things is where we have some room, but those represent only probably 20% of the cost of the project. Most of what we're doing here is what we need to do to come into compliance. But there's different, how we go about our design of those parts is where we can change. It's not so much the scope, but the way the scope is achieved, I guess, is the better way of doing it. And there is some possibility of putting off some things to the future if we're truly that squeezed for budget. But what we'd like to do, if possible, is get them done now, because while we've got 73% grant funding, that's the best time to do it. But we're aware of that. So I think we'll come back with a progress report on our collaborative design process, and effectively to contrast what we wanted to do with where we're at. And so if there's some scope reductions on these discretionary things, I would look to bring them back to council for it. We have to stay within the general scope also of the funding program. So for example, we still have to do the reed bed and wetland because we said we would do it. But I was very careful to not say exactly how much we would do, to leave us elbow room as to how we do those. So I think I'd plan to come back to council with quarterly status reports, but where there's scope changes, we'll change that. And I think the best way to finish off my answer to this question is the next presentation I make to council, probably in a month, with a budget update, and then the process that will go with all of this stuff moving forward is when we can have those discussions in more detail.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I just have one more, hopefully easy thing. I know at some time in the past, when we were talking about this, there was, or maybe it was at a village hall, there were the residents in the area had some concerns about how this might impact them. And so we talked about building in some kind of information flow amongst those people, and when would that start and what would that look like?
Yep, we did talk about that, and we've got that in our project planning. The intention is, once we've gone through our conceptual design and we've got our idea as to what and where and how, we can then take it to the public on that, and particularly the local residents. So there's nothing new to take at the moment, obviously, because we haven't started. But the intention would be, at the end of this 3-month design process, we have then got information to take out. And on the wetland component, we'll be looking for actually collaborative input from the community. With the design of the lagoons, it's more for information, but there's some scope for some input, but not too much. But we know what the concerns are with noise and odor, so that's a consideration as we go through the design. But then we can come back with, say, here's roughly what it's going to be and how it will look and feel and that sort of thing. Okay, so likely the next time you come back, because you'd have a piece of that anyway, or you'd have a piece of that started. The next time I come back, the whole time is done. When I next come to council, I will have a detailed implementation schedule. And so then I'll be able to say when I expect to have those public information sessions, which, as in the past, I will then organise, but maybe with some help. So. Thank you so much.
Councillor Sproul.
My question had been about the biochar reed beds, and Councillor Brown got that answer. Thank you.
Okay. These contractors that we are hiring, do they live local or are they from out of the area?
They are Integrated Sustainability is actually the head office for that company is in Calgary, but they have a Vancouver office, which is where Troy is, and they have one staff who lives on Salt Spring Island, actually. Maple Rinders, their office is in Kelowna, but they have staff throughout the province, but none of them are based on Vancouver Island, if that was what you were meaning.
So they're going to be looking for places to stay when they get here?
Yes.
That could be a challenge.
I think they're aware of that. We'll certainly remind them. It's, yeah, Maple Rinders in particular are experienced with this sort of thing because every project they've got to go somewhere and set up shop. But yep, they're aware of that.
Okay. The other one was the materials and that, but I think we've got a 3-month leave here. Hopefully that COVID most people will have their vaccine by then and things will be different.
Yes, I would love to be able to do in-person engagement with the community again. Yeah.
And is this committee starting up again?
With the committee, yes, and I guess I'll call it maybe. The committee serves at the pleasure of the council, and its original mandate, which was to be there to guide the production of the Stage 2 Liquid Waste Management Plan, has been completed. But what I would like to do is call the committee back for another meeting and update them on everything, and also in another month we will have a preliminary report on the field trial of the biochar reed bed. So if you've been for a walk down there and seen all my totes with plants and water running in them and so on, yeah, the committee had asked for that trial, so we're doing it. So I'd like to have a meeting there on that one, but in terms of its official terms of reference, if we wanted to keep the committee going, we should probably reconstitute the committee with some new terms of reference and let the members decide to stand again or maybe invite new members, because the official LWMP purpose is fulfilled for now. We will need a new LWMP committee in the future, but for the next couple of years while we do the project, we don't. So that's my plan, is to come back for a reunion meeting and an update, but perhaps Rob and I should put our heads together on this and maybe bring a report to council on what the future of the committee should be and seek council's direction.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. And council members, there are 3 motions there.
I'll move it then. That council accept the proposal from Collier's project leaders to be the project manager for the wastewater upgrade project and authorize staff to enter into negotiations for a contract with initial value not to exceed $235,000, excluding GST. And that council accept the proposal from Integrated Sustainability Consultants Limited to be the project manager for the wastewater upgrade project and authorize staff and the project manager to enter into negotiations for a contract with initial value not to exceed $1,026,467.69, including GST. And that council accept the proposal from Maple Rinders Constructors Limited to be the construction manager for the wastewater upgrade project and authorize staff and the project manager to enter into negotiations for a contract with initial value not to exceed 1.5 million, excluding GST.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Congratulations, Paul, and thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you. I look forward to moving this forward.
So do we.
Yes.
Great to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay.
And back together.
Yeah.
We have no bylaws tonight, no new business, and no notice, motions, and announcements. Question period. Please send your questions by email to info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period. And we look forward to any questions that anybody has. Everybody enjoying the cold weather? It is cold out there. The sun is beautiful, but it is cold.
Perfect disc golf weather.
Late
Yeah,
season skiing weather.
Yeah, there's lots of vehicles on the road there. See, they were in the orchard pruning the trees today, our gardener.
Kind of ironic. Every time I'm there, when it's just as full as it ever is, the course really isn't that full. So I'm finding it to be more walkers and others than actual disc golfers, really.
Oh.
Sometimes it's full, but oftentimes when it's really crazy full, the course actually isn't that full. Yeah.
Just
Weird.
people out walking.
Yeah, well, that's a good lead point for sure.
I think the CRI parking lot's full, so they
Yes.
just keep driving. That's the next spot to stop. Is my guess.
That's why Johnny moved. I ruined their parking with.
The atmosphere changed significantly, I think, down there.
Yes. Rachel, any questions? Any emails?
We have no questions coming in tonight.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, it was a very quick meeting. 7 o'clock. That's a really good time. It won't be so late tonight. We're going to close the meeting to the public. Someone like to make the recommendation?
That council closed the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
Seconded?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.